I want to thank everybody who came out to last week's webinars, and especially those 11 of you who signed up for this fall's ADHD Rewired Coaching and Accountability Group. That's right, I said 11. That means I actually have one more spot left. If you are interested in this group, contact me ASAP. We officially start the coaching next Monday, September 21st. If you want to be considered for this fall group, go right now to meetme.so/Eric Tivers. That's meetme.so/Eric Tivers. Your 20-minute consultation must be scheduled by this Thursday, September 17th. All right, on with the episode.
I think that fear is the most difficult emotion for parents when it comes to their children. And so often, even in sessions, I'll see a parent just livid with a child and kind of grab them by the shoulders and say, what scares you? What is frightening you right now? And the whole tone changes. Behind that, you can see the love, you can see the concern. And kids respond so beautifully to that. When we realize what we fear, we can look at how to manage that. So the idea of looking at what we're afraid of and managing in a way that really helps us relate to our kids and protect them. And it also then allows us to let them fall on their butt a little bit sometimes and get up and see their own resilience.
ADHD Rewired, episode 81. This is the show designed to help those of us who have really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. My name is Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, coach, and consultant. We know that starting can be the hardest part, so let's get started. But first, let me thank our sponsors. Support for this podcast comes from Audible. For a free audiobook download, go to erictivers.com/audible for a link for that free download and for some hand-picked recommendations. Go to erictivers.com/audible for your free audiobook download. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. I am here in the virtual ADHD Rewired studios in Northern Illinois with my guest, Linnea Lopresti. Linnea has been a clinical social worker for over 30 years and works with adults and children with ADHD, in addition to other personal and other neurobiological issues. In addition, she has ADD herself and raises a child with ADHD. If you are lucky enough to live in our neck of the woods here in Illinois, Linnea will be presenting on the Courageous Parenting series, which addresses such issues as managing our fears as parents and understanding and managing both our own and our children's ADHD. For more information about this series, you can find a link in this episode's show notes at ADHDrewired.com. Linnea, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And good to see you again. I got to see you last night at our Toastmasters meeting, which is where we actually met.
Absolutely. I enjoy those.
And so you were telling me just recently or last night that you did an ADD presentation, and I missed it.
I know. I was sorry that you couldn't be there that night.
Me too. Man, do you remember it?
I do.
Maybe we just, how would you feel about on the spot, just like talking about what you talked about? Let's see what Toastmasters really does.
Oh, thanks. Well, I think what was important to me about that speech is that I feel like too often people are given a prescription and a diagnosis and kind of sent on their way without really understanding what it means to have ADD, what it feels like to have ADD. And all the nuances, the way it impacts us personally, academically, emotionally, in so many different ways. So I think the purpose of that speech really was to try to give some insight into what it feels like to have ADD. Which is
so important, because I think when we were talking about this, I think it was you and I that were talking about how we view it as, we view the behaviors of it, and it's so important to understand what it's actually like from the person's perspective to have it. And that's really the whole notion of why I do this podcast, because it goes beyond that the DSM rating scales and all that kind of stuff, to help people understand what's it actually like to, have really good intentions and fall short of living up to both your own and others' expectations.
Exactly. And one of the things that strikes me so often is that people see ADHD as a matter of attention and then define a lot of the other symptoms of ADD as character flaws and don't see them as connected to the diagnosis.
Yeah.
And when we see it as connected to the diagnosis, we can do something about it.
Right.
If we see it as simply a character flaw, it just assaults our self-esteem. And there's very little we can do about that.
Now, let me ask you this, Linnea. So you and I both know that in a very deep level. Do you ever have these moments where you still kind of are feeling like that character flaw, that even though you know this so deeply, do you still have those moments where you feel that there's this character flaw?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that even when you know a lot about it, sometimes there's some shame or some embarrassment. One thing that struck me, Eric, is it really hit me when I got my daughter diagnosed, because I had known for a long time I had ADHD, but I was sort of managing the shame by managing the ADD on my own, figuring it out, not having to get help, not having to confront that. And when I actually went in and got help and a diagnosis, I realized there was still shame there because I didn't want to need help. I wanted to do it on my own. And I think sometimes there's a real conflict from very independent and very driven to not wanting to need help, not wanting to acknowledge it. And I think sometimes for people, they manage the shame until they actually need help. And that's really hard to reach out. That was hard for me.
Yeah, I think, I don't know how familiar you are with like Thomas Brown's work, because he talks a lot of about emotion and the role of emotion in ADHD. And, thinking about that in the realm of Brene Brown's work on shame. And I just, I think one of the reasons why her work has just resonated so profoundly with me is that shame piece with ADHD is just, it's like the big elephant in the room that we need to talk about, because the more we talk about it, the less shame we feel. I mean, that's one of the things that she talks about, is this idea that shame cannot, maintain in secrecy. That's what makes it grow.
Exactly. I've also felt, and I work in the Barrington area, where I think sometimes it's very difficult for people to reach out. And I've often thought that very often the problem that they're coming in for treatment for is not the biggest problem. The shame about the problem is the biggest problem, is the most difficulty. Once we overcome the shame, we can absolutely solve the neurobiological issues. And when we do that too, I think it also helps, when we're not in this like muck of this shame pool that we're like sitting in, when we can, reach out and to somebody and say, help me. It's we're so many people are afraid to do that. And yet that's why I think it's courage to ask for help, because it's doing it even though it's scary. But that's, to me, I just found like, one, it helps our brain work better when we're trying to not be in this like shame cycle of like, oh, I should have done this already. Oh, now how am I going to move forward? This thing was already due. And, they're going to think I'm the worst person. How are they going to, and all of these kind of this cyclone of thoughts just jump into our head. And now our executive functioning is even worse because of it. Absolutely. And to speak to that, I so often think that when we own it, we can take responsibility for it. And when we take responsibility for it, life works better. My daughter, I used to look at her sometimes and go, honey, it is not your fault that you have this, but it is your responsibility to manage it. And if you want life to work, you need to do that. And I do think that life does work. One of the things that I do absolutely believe about ADHD is when we own it and look at it and understand it, it absolutely doesn't have to impact our life as a handicap.
Right. Doesn't mean that things aren't going to be harder.
Absolutely.
But that's part of the acceptance piece of ADHD. It's not that we accept it and we're like, woohoo, we have ADHD. Yeah, ADHD pride. I was actually thinking about this recently. It's like, all these different pride movements, it's not about the pride, I think, of the thing, of whether it's gay pride, ADHD pride, whatever it is. It's the pride of being able to have the courage to move forward despite challenges, despite the hardship that having, whatever that label that you identify with is, that's where the pride comes from. It's I'm doing it anyways. It's, it's that the pride of, I'm getting in the ring despite that I'm going to get knocked down sometimes and I'm still going to get back up. That's, to me, that's what pride is about.
Exactly. And I also think that too, though, that when we own that, we can manage it, but everybody has to play it. I mean, I think therapy does not change us. It helps us accept responsibility for who we are and play to our strength and accept our weaknesses and create a life that works in that arena. And so I don't think it's not like woohoo, but it is certainly about what works for me.
So as a therapist, you're saying that therapy does not change us.
I don't believe so. I think it helps us accept who we are and own it and work within those parameters. And I think when we do that, life works better. And, the idea that people need to be changed or need to be fixed, to me, is not a paradigm I work from. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I do think ownership and responsibility and accountability is huge, though.
Right. Right. It's not an issue of being broken. It's an issue of what we're doing isn't working, and let's figure out, ways so life doesn't have to be so hard.
But I actually think that is one thing that I do have to say has come out as a strength of mine after dealing with ADHD for so long, because I never got in the front door doing anything. I always found my way in a window or a back door or over a fence or something, Yes. I never did it the way that everybody else did it. And so when it comes to be a problem, I don't look at them in only one way. Mm-hmm. I actually have this attitude that there's got to be some kind of way to figure this out.
And I think that speaks to the idea of having a growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. I just read listened to the audiobook Mindset by someone really awesome who wrote this book. It really elaborates on the idea of this, there's a huge difference in people's their happiness and their overall satisfaction and their success in life, just from the position of having a growth mindset, which is exactly what you just spoke to. There's got to be a way versus, oh, this is hard, I'm not going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that builds in resilience and optimism when you do problem solve and figure things out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely view myself as a problem solver, I try to figure out puzzles, unless it has to do with math, and then I'm just going to, pretend it's not there.
Exactly.
Bury my head in the sand. Give it to somebody else.
I did that. I finally did that with my medical billing. I was spending hours doing that, and that is so not my strength.
You and I both.
I finally just decided I'd rather spend my time doing what I love, which is spending time with my clients and my children and other things, and let someone else do that. But I think that goes back to that shame, Eric, that I should be able to do it, so I'll make myself do it, versus saying, is this how I want to spend my time and energy?
Right. Because I think when people with ADHD are spending a lot of time in what I call the red zone, the things that are really challenging and mentally and emotionally taxing for them, and you add that to the shame factor of, oh, I should be able to do this. It's not that hard, but it's so deep in the red zone. When I first started my practice, I was having panic attacks trying to figure out my billing and insurance. And I was like, I'm done doing that. There are people who I want to give them the opportunity to do what they're good at by providing them with my calendar and everything else that they need so they can send my clients bills. Cause I can't, I know it would take me, if I were to do it after each client session, it would take me 3 minutes, but I don't do it, Right. So it's like, So, okay, I am just going to acknowledge that. I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to happily outsource that.
Right. I love a paradigm that Carolyn Mace has about life and energy and time. And she says, okay, you got $100 worth of energy to spend in a lifetime. How much of it do you want to spend doing things that you hate, you're bad at, if you don't need to, spending time in terms of staying angry at someone or looking in the rearview mirror? How much energy do we want to put into something that isn't going to impact us positively in some way?
It's great. I love that. Yeah. And I really try to spend as little energy as I can. But I think the important thing too for me, and this kind of goes to kind of a mindful perspective, is when I'm noticing that I'm putting energy somewhere where I say, wow, this is really taking a lot of emotional kind of negative energy that I don't think I want to be doing that. But if it's I'm kind of getting sucked into that, I try to not judge the experience and just really try to just say, okay, I'm just noticing what I'm feeling. And I try to, view it from a very curious kind of curious mind, instead of saying, oh, now I'm in the shame cycle of feeling bad because I'm feeling bad. And, it's like just taking that breath and saying, okay, this is what I'm feeling. Like I'm overwhelmed. I screwed up. I didn't communicate something in a way that I meant to. Someone is pissed at me. It's like, all these things can so easily trigger the shame cycle. And it's just being able to acknowledge it and be like, okay, this is what I'm feeling, and not try to push it away. It's that kind of the paradox, I think, of a lot of the stuff that we do. It's, leaning into it is kind of what helps us actually kind of let go of a lot of things.
Absolutely. I think curiosity and acceptance is much more productive than judgment. We all get caught in the judgment, but curiosity and acceptance is so much easier. I use the sort of the thought about walking downstream instead of upstream with things. But the other thing I want to say too is that I think we lose perspective as someone with ADD a lot of the time, because other people actually also forget things sometimes, and other people also make mistakes sometimes. And I think that very often at least when I'm coming from a shame place, I think, oh, I made a mistake. Now the world is really going to know I'm not okay, versus I made a mistake. It doesn't define me at that moment. It doesn't define anyone. And most mistakes, by the way, are just inconveniences. They really are.
And the flip side of that too is that, mistakes don't define someone. Neither do the successes. And I think we have to recognize that it's, so this idea of productivity, and so much of this podcast has been focused on productivity and helping people be more productive. And, that's what my coaching groups are all about, is helping people be more productive. But it's also way more than just that, because of the emotion that is involved in productivity for people with ADHD, because it's all tied into the mistakes, the letdowns, the failures, the oh crap, I did it again moments. And so it's like, it's so much more than productivity.
Well, it is. And one of the things that I've realized personally as well as professionally, Eric, is that until we believe in ourselves internally, no matter how hard we try to prove that we are okay, it's never going to work, because unless you believe it, no matter what evidence we get, we find a way to diminish it. When I was younger, because of the ADD, it was undiagnosed, and pretty much people thought I was not bright enough to go to college. And luckily for me, anger works like Ritalin, so it really helped promote, push me through school.
What works like Ritalin?
Anger.
Okay.
Worked a lot like Ritalin. So I was going to prove that I could not only get through school, I could do it on my own, I could work full time, and I could get A's. And I did get A's. And then I thought, those professors are idiots, because I didn't believe I was intelligent. It wasn't until we start to believe something about ourselves that we start to take in the information externally. It's so sad to me. I see so many people that feel like frauds, and the anxiety and the shame underlying it. They're tremendously delightful, successful people that feel like they're pulling the wool over somebody's eyes, and they're not. But there's just this underlying belief that if the world knew this about me, they would not see me as successful. And that to me is very sad, because you can spend a lifetime trying to prove something, but until you believe it, the proof never sticks.
And another thing and I've shared this with my coaching groups, and I think I'll just share this right now too, is that like, even, so this, I don't know what episode this will be when this comes out, but I every time I'm recording an interview, I'm like, wow, I haven't missed a week yet. So this will probably be an episode like in somewhere in the 80s. And we know that with ADHD, being consistent is typically not one of our things that we're known for.
It's not our superpower.
No, it is not our superpower. And so every episode I record, and I'm like, I did it again. Like, and so when I do it, I feel this sense of like awesomeness. And at the same time, I absolutely have that little voice in the back of my mind is, they're going to figure you out. You're a fraud. And I share that because I want people to know, who are listening to this who, you know, think that I might have all my stuff together. I don't. I screw up too. I forget things. I do really well with stuff for a while. I have really great organizational systems that I manage for a period of time, you know, I have unanswered emails that I've completely forgotten about. All of those things I do too. And what makes it easier to move forward and to get back on track is sharing that shame with others. And I just want people to know that whatever you are thinking as, you know, feeling like a fraud, it's a feeling. And I just try to acknowledge it's just a feeling. And I'm not going to give that feeling more power than it deserves.
And I do think you're right, though, sharing it. And Brene Brown speaks to this, too. The idea of having a safe place to speak. Sarah, my daughter Sarah, has ADHD also. And we'll get on the phone going, oh, boy, I had a moment. Oh, yeah. And we have this absolute, you know, do not judge each other for this. So it's sort of our safe place to go, oh, you'll appreciate this. And we all have those.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the ability to own it and to be with that. One of the things that I really felt when I was raising a child with ADHD and with having it myself and owning it with Sarah and being able to say, yeah, it's hard for me too. And because I think then she could see that life was working for me. And I think when we as professionals and parents can look at people really honestly and go, yes, sometimes I trip, but generally speaking, life works. And I think it can give some hope. But also, I mean, I remember Sarah walking in the door from school and saying, oh, Mom, as soon as I get home, I know you get it. You get it because you have it. You get it. It's so nice to have that. And so whether it's friends, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a child or a mother, the idea that we can share with each other what that feels like, because I think that's the piece that as hard as someone else tries to understand that does not have ADHD, they can cognitively get it. But I think they can love us, they can accept it, but they don't get it in the same way.
And as I'm hearing you describe that, Linnea, I'm like getting goosebumps about it. Cause that's like when I go in and talk to groups and you probably do the same thing. Like that's my hope, is that I can help parents who maybe don't get it, help their kids feel like they are understood. You know, cause that's where all these, you know, the add-on diagnoses come is from the shame and the in a sense the trauma of consistent failure and being misunderstood, of thinking that all the things that you're doing or not doing are character flaws and personality deficits. And so I just think that, you know, the power of just knowing that your daughter, you know, would come home and just feel understood, or she can call you and just know that you just get it. I wish that for everybody. I do. I just think that's so powerful.
But I also have to say, I so appreciate now that she's an adult. She's 23. I can call her and she gets it, which is kind of nice for me too.
So talk to us a little bit about that. So you're doing this whole courageous parenting series, but before we kind of talk about that, what were some of the challenges for you as a parent with ADHD, and how did you, what were some of the things that you had to do to help with the areas that were tough for you as just a parent, and then also parenting a child with ADHD?
Okay. Well, one of the things is that, I knew quite young that Sarah was struggling. That was pretty obvious.
Like how old?
She was 4, but one of the things that Sarah is my daughter by adoption, so she also had been exposed to a lot of chemicals and drugs pre-birth, so it really gave her some challenges. And she's smart as could be, and she's a doll, but she struggled with some pretty severe ADHD. Luckily, she's also incredibly smart, so her brain was going about 150 miles an hour all the time. But I really saw that. But I was sort of stuck in my own paradigm for a while of, we're going to figure this out. We're going to manage it. We're not going to need help. We're going to do it that way. And I really started to see her getting depressed when she was in about 4th grade, which is not atypical. And one night she said to me before bed, she said, I'm laying here wondering how I'm going to screw up tomorrow, what I'm going to forget, how I'm going to embarrass myself. What that's going to mean. And I realized that I had imposed my system under her, and I felt badly about that. I still do. And that it was about, at that point, really grabbing onto things differently. like taking full ownership and acknowledging it, that unless I dealt with my own feelings about this, I couldn't raise her to be proud of herself and proud of her accomplishments and not ashamed of her difficulties. So I think one of the things I absolutely believe as a parent is that our kids are a confrontation on us. And if we take that confrontation, the growth that can happen from that and the benefits to the relationship are absolutely phenomenal. I think I am so far ahead of the game for having gone through that with her personally, for myself, not just for her. And so I think that, it was keeping order. I had learned ways of managing my ADD. For example, my apartment was never as clean when I was going through school as when I had papers due, because if I had any kind of distraction in my field, it would really bother me. So I managed my ADHD by creating order, because I didn't like to have chaos going on internally and externally. So I would create order and Sarah would mess that up. And then I'd create more order and she would mess that up. I was finding this really challenging. And it wasn't really until I was going through that, raising Sarah, menopause, and dealing with my own ADHD, that I got on medicine for it. Because I was like, okay, this is untenable at this point in time.
When were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed when I knew it when I was in college. I kind of figured it out myself. But when I was formally diagnosed is when Sarah was diagnosed. I went in and looked at that too and said, let's look really honestly at this and figure out what to do. So I was in my 50s.
Oh, wow.
I was late 40s. So, because I was 41 when I had my children.
Did that confirmation change anything for you?
It made it very real. And what it did make me realize is that there had been shame. I had the knowledge that I had ADHD, but I hadn't dealt with the emotional impact of what that meant to me. And so it just made me look at things a little bit differently and be more accepting. And I think that's been really helpful.
Yeah, acceptance is, it's, to me, it's almost the only way forward, but it's so hard for people to sometimes get there.
But I do have to tell you, I remember one day being particularly frustrated trying to manage the neurobiological firestorm we live in this house. And
the neurobiological firestorm, I like that. That sounds like it could be like a progressive band of some kind.
Exactly. So I called my sister and I said, you know how I like to have my ducks in a row. I like to create order. I like to have my ducks in a row. And she was like, yes. I have no idea where my ducks are. I've lost all of my ducks. Sarah has taken my ducks. She's done something with my ducks. I have no ducks. And that was our standing joke for years. I'd call her up and she'd go, you have no ducks, do you? None. I have no ducks. So, yes.
What we're going to do right there is we're going to take a break on that, thinking about where did she put those ducks and wondering if you ever found them. We'll be right back, and we're going to talk after we return from our break about courageous parenting. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial. Go to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Check show notes for link. Zoom video conferencing is so easy to use that with all the extra time I saved not having to configure complicated settings, I recorded this promotion. Support ADHD Rewired and check out Zoom video conferencing. Go to erictivers.com/Zoom. Again, that's erictivers.com/Zoom. Get a Zoom room. Stay tuned to the very end of the podcast. I'm going to be debuting the first unofficial episode of a new unofficial podcast featuring my 4-year-old son and me. I asked him what he thought the podcast should be called, and he said,
ADHD Rewired. End of ADHD. The second letter of the alphabet. Mommy's going to be CDHD Rewired.
Listen after the outro for the BDHD Rewired podcast. And we are back with Linnea Lopresti. Did I still get the name right?
You did. Absolutely.
All right. As many of my listeners know, that I will frequently botch names right as I'm introducing them, because that's just part of my brain that does not cooperate with me.
I actually forget names. They can fall into a black hole. So it's it's one of those things.
Yeah,
I finally just looked at that, and I just admit that to people now. I'll remember talking to them and go, loved the conversation. I cannot remember your name.
Yeah, I remember every detail about the conversation, where we were. Like, yes, it's, you know, and that's one of those things where it's like, we were talking earlier about, okay, how do I solve this problem? And this is one that I haven't come up with a solution to yet. Like, you know, repeat it 3 times, find an association, try to, you know, create all these memory tricks. But names are stored in a specific area of the brain, which my area of the brain for names typically doesn't work very well. So,
yeah, that does not work at all for me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about courageous parenting. So it's this parenting series that you're doing.
Right.
Just talk to me about it.
Well, I think the idea came from me. I was working with a parent, and she asked me, what was the most difficult part of parenting? And I didn't hesitate for a moment, Eric. I said, managing the fear. It's not hard to nurture them, love them, play with them, take care of them, grab onto them. But when we are afraid for our children, it's really tough. And I oftentimes see kids where they'll say, well, that have ADD, and they'll say, well, my parent loves, my mom loves my sister better because she's doing everything perfectly. And I guess my response to that very often is she doesn't love her more. She scares her less. Because I think that very often when we're scared is when we hover and control and yell. And it's very difficult. I think that fear is the most difficult emotion for parents when it comes to their children. And so often, even in sessions, I'll see a parent just livid with a child and kind of grab them by the shoulders and say, what scares you? What is frightening you right now? And the whole tone changes. Behind that, you can see the love, you can see the concern. And kids respond so beautifully to that. So I think that when we realize our own fears, it again goes back to that awareness. When we realize what we fear, we can actually be more protective. We can look at how to manage that. I mean, an example of that, when Sarah was very young, again, because she wasn't a healthy infant, I remember standing over her crib thinking, I was like the breath police. I was getting up every 20 minutes to make sure she was breathing. And I realized I didn't know what to do if she wasn't. So that was sort of not very productive. So, when I looked at what I was really afraid of, it was like, how do I solve this? I took CPR. I, got more medical information. I actually tried to get some rest so that if something did happen, I could be effective, versus just worrying, because that's not helpful. So the idea of looking at what we're afraid of and managing in a way that really helps us relate to our kids and protect them. And it also then allows us to let them fall on their butt a little bit sometimes and get up and see their own resilience and become more independent. Which
is so, so important. The thing that I think that I don't even know what to call it, pop psychology culture of making everyone feel good and everyone gets a ribbon, and it's like kids need to learn how to fail, and not giving them those opportunities is damaging to them.
Yeah, I think it really undermines their self-confidence, because what they don't believe is that they'll make it through difficult times. They come up against something where they may have a feeling and it frightens them and they retreat. And so often disappointment is a feeling. It's not a death sentence. It's hurt feelings if we're going to take risks, we're going to get hurt sometimes. We don't want to get harmed. That's the difference. We never want our children to be harmed.
How do you define the difference?
That's a good question. I think that harmed has to do with permanent damage of some sort. Hurt sometimes is an experience of a feeling. I think that it has to be within parameters, for example. So often I'll see kids come in and they'll say, well, I don't like the teacher, and so I want to get taken out of that classroom. And, well, maybe you don't. But is the teacher mean? Is there something hostile going on? Is there something that feels abusive? Are you scared? Do you not feel safe? Those kinds of questions I would ask. But too often, I think when people get removed from every situation that evokes feeling, they don't learn to manage their feelings. They don't learn to accept their feelings. And that's, I think, one piece that sets us up for addiction sometimes. Mm-hmm. I define an addiction as an attempt to feel better that bites you in the butt. It's a way to make your feelings go away. Rather than acknowledge them, feel them, and learn from them. And so I think when we can't manage our own fear as parents, we try to prevent our children from being in any circumstance that's going to be difficult. Because it's hard as a parent to see your child hurt. Mm-hmm. So I think that in terms of managing the fear, I think we raise more resilient, independent children. I feel better knowing my children can protect themselves, but they don't learn to do that if I can't let go a little bit. Mm-hmm. I'm not there all the time.
Yeah. And that is, I think, when I'm working with families, that's what I'm always thinking about is what are we doing, not just to get your kid through this moment, but preparing them to be contributing members of society who are going to be, functional and are going to be content with where they're at. Whenever I hear parents say, I just want my kid to be happy. It's like, well, let's maybe talk about that a little bit. Of course we see it's joyous for us as parents to see when our kids are happy, but if that's our only goal, like we're going to be constantly banging our heads against the wall.
Right. And it's a little one-dimensional. It really is. Mm-hmm. I mean, the idea of seeing our children be disappointed and then problem solve how to do it differently,
Right. I would rather see my kid or any kid be struggle and fail at something and look at it and problem solve and say, okay, wait, I think I see what I did wrong, and pick themselves up and try again. To me, that's like, that's a celebration right there. I mean, that's how we move forward through life. I mean, it's like not everything's going to be happy,
Right.
And happy, the research on happiness shows that that's where happiness comes from. It's through getting through struggle. It's through overcoming challenges. It's not from avoiding them.
Right. And to come alongside of you with that, I also think the younger people are when they do that, the more resilient they become. What I see very often when kids have never had a disappointment or a failure, when they get into their 20s or their 30s, they keep fearing it. Mm-hmm. And so the anxiety is so high. The ability to take risks is low, to take chances. I'm not talking dangerous risks. I'm talking a personal risk.
It's like starting a business.
Yeah, exactly. And so I almost worry for kids sometimes that have had these quote unquote perfect lives, that have always been successful, that the first time they fall on their butt, it's really going to hurt.
And I see that too, especially with kids who have giftedness. So they get into this, it's usually their freshman or sophomore year of college, where all of a sudden, like their natural abilities, like now they have to actually study, and they have no clue how to do it, and they become flooded and they shut down, and it's like this train wreck that they're surprised by. They don't understand it, and that's what it is. It's, and I think I mentioned earlier in this book, Mindset, when you have a kid this author was talking about when you have a kid who's constantly getting, 100% and A's and everything, instead of congratulating your kid, tell them, I'm sorry, this was so easy for you. Let's try to find another area where we can actually learn something to grow your mind. And I just love that, it's this idea of really, really thinking about how we are raising our kids, because it's not just the praising every accomplishment, because that can actually do more harm than good.
Well, I also have another daughter, Anna, who is a completely different personality than Sarah. I'm crazy about both of them. And Anna was that very driven, very bright. I think she had times in my IQ added together or something. I don't know what happened there, but she was very bright. And it was, it's like that brain is a gift. What you do with it, how you are, who you are, is going to tell me who you are, and that tells me more about you. But yeah, she struggled with perfectionism. She was very anxious, and she struggled with perfectionism when she was little. And the sad part about that is if I think if I'm perfect enough, I won't be anxious anymore. That will never work. You can never be perfect enough to change your neurobiology. So it's about recognizing that, again, it's just about how you're going to feel if you're not perfect.
Yeah.
And accepting that and allowing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, it's knowing that one perfection, I look at perfection as a dirty word. You know, it's the idea that perfect sucks, good enough is great. You know,
I can't identify with perfect, so I don't know what to tell you.
Because if you think about like the return on time investment and what you get, so let's say I put together, and I just went through this recently with doing a presentation for a school. I did this 2-day kind of workshop, and one of the presentations, I don't even know how many hours I put in. I mean, probably over 50, probably more, probably absurdly more than that. and like, it was okay. I mean, it wasn't like a knock it out of the park presentation, and that's what I was going for. But I learned a great lesson that teachers are a tough group to present to. But the following day, at the same district, I presented on ADHD, and I spent about 2 hours putting this presentation together the night before, putting together presentations that I've given in the past, and I knocked that one out of the park. And I was like, okay, so I gotta trust myself a bit, and and the things that I kind of improvised and I came up with these analogies on the spot, just like that I hadn't even thought of before, and like I trusted myself, and it went so much better, and I didn't have anxiety, because the whole time I was thinking, I don't need to prepare for this ADHD one. I know this stuff, and I do, and it wasn't a false kind of a belief. It was like,
no.
You know, and so the other one, it was that. You know, that fear was kicking in. It was you know, so there was a lot of that. And it's like, I probably could have spent 10 hours on putting this presentation together, and it may have been just as good.
Right. Exactly. Well, I love the notion that you have to earn the right to speak on something, and we earn the right by experiencing it, knowing about it, having a level of expertise. But you have clearly have the right to speak on these things, Eric. You are all over this.
So take us into this courageous parenting class that you're doing. So what's it like? Is it like a 1-day thing? Is it
Well, it's a 3-hour workshop at Arlington Center in Arlington Heights,
Illinois. And, so
right.
keep in mind, we have people who are in Thailand and in Egypt and in Israel and in Kenya. That listen to this. I mean, it's, I'm not just making that up. I can actually see on my media host server where the downloads are coming from.
Wow. That's impressive.
It's mind blowing to me when I see that.
So the workshops are going to be 3 hours, and they're going to be maxed at 15 people, so that we can actually talk about what we're afraid of, you know, how to manage that, what that feels like. Participation, because I tend to be very much of an introvert, and I tend to be shy. I don't require participation, but it is certainly allowed, you know, and encouraged if someone would like to share those concerns. And then we can address issues particularly. So what we'll be looking at is what frightens us, how to manage those fears, how to really protect our children, how to teach our children to protect themselves.
Is there like a specific exercise that maybe you can share with us?
I think that
Sort of puts you on the spot there.
It does. I think that one of the biggest things for me is if I find myself getting, you know, anger by its definition is a defense against fear and pain.
Anger by definition is a defense against fear and pain. Okay. So
if I'm getting just enraged about something, I usually will back up the truck and go, okay, what is it that's scaring me? You know, and then what do I have control over and what don't I? And simply put energy into those things that I actually have control over. I also then can talk to my kids and take ownership. I think when we're angry, we're coming at our kids like they're doing something wrong because they're making us feel something we don't want to feel. And if we can look at them and go, I'm scared for you, or it makes me angry because of this, I think I think that looking at what I have control over realistically and what I don't, and looking at how I would feel if those things happened. You know, can I give you an example?
Absolutely.
I'm going to go back to the time when I was standing over Sarah's crib and being very worried that she was not going to make it.
And I think most parents have been there.
I absolutely believe that. That's why I kind of am going there. I'm with you. And I remember standing there thinking, okay, I don't absolutely know how long I have her for. And losing her would devastate me. But what do I have control over?
That's such a scary thought.
Oh, and it's but we don't allow ourselves, I think, to go there, but we react to it so often. And so I thought, okay, what do I have control over? Again, I can learn about, what I could do to help her if something went wrong. But the other thing that I try to live with no regrets. I'll tolerate feelings, but I don't want regrets. And I thought, okay, nothing in this world would make me not be devastated if something happened to her. But what would comfort me is if I made every day as good as I could. If she knew every day that I loved her, if I knew however long her life was, that it was a great life and that I was able to give her that, then that would give me comfort. Mm. And so I looked at what I had control over and what I didn't, and grabbed control of those things and let go of the other things.
And if we put into two kind of categories of things that we do and don't have control over, it's a scary but also freeing notion to realize that we have control over very, very little of our lives.
Right. We have control, I think, over, we keep trying to control how we feel, but I don't think that works. We control how we think. Mm-hmm. We control our choices, our responses, our reactions, but really not much else. You're right.
Because the whole adage of, while we're spending all this time and effort, being busy trying to plan our lives, life happens.
Yes.
And curveballs are almost guaranteed.
Yes. Pretty much. Yeah, I'm thinking that. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's, having that, one of the exercises I walk a lot of my clients through is, okay, go down that line of thinking. What's the worst that can happen? Really go that. And then really ask yourself, not, will I enjoy it? Because we know we won't enjoy it, but can I handle it? Will I be able to deal with it? And the answer is almost always yes.
Yes. Well, if you look at, so often I really do think, Eric, what we're fearing is how we will feel if certain things happen. Mm-hmm. Because we problem solve typically what's happening. Fear is almost always about the future. It's about what will happen next, what's going to happen, But usually what we're afraid of is the pain we might feel if something happens, or the humiliation, or the disappointment, or the grief. Mm-hmm. So it really, when it comes down to it, is about the emotional impact of a circumstance on us.
And looking to it that we can, our emotions can tell us so much. So instead of trying to push away and avoid, lean into, and with curiously, there's just so much that we can gain from really leaning into those emotions and exploring them. And instead of saying, oh, why am I feeling this way? Ask yourself, same words, different tone. Why am I feeling this way? I call it the curious why versus the judgmental why.
Right. Exactly. When I find myself spinning or running or something, very often I'll sit down and try to turn around and look right into the thing that I'm fearing. Mm-hmm. Say, what is this? What am I trying to outrun right now? And what can I do about it? Because I'm probably not going to be able to outrun it. Mm-hmm. So I
just got to make space for it.
Exactly. Well put. Yeah. Yeah. So there's that. And then the other workshop that I'll be doing is ADHD from the inside out, which is to help parents understand what it feels like to do it and to have ADHD.
So, Lene, I don't know if we talked about that presentation in our past conversation.
I thought we had, but I'm not sure either.
Okay, so we might have, so I want to let you know something. I may have unintentionally stolen a title from you. So I presented on something that was basically a very, very similar title. It's like Understanding ADHD from the Inside Out. And was that seed planted in a subconscious way? And I didn't even recognize it. But I think I was also in a conversation with someone else where I was brainstorming titles for. So if I did unintentionally steal that from you, I'm very sorry.
It's fine. I'm really fine with that, Eric, because that's what we're doing. That's exactly what we're doing here.
It's so funny. And I think it's just kind of a part of having ADHD is doing work in this realm where I'm creating things. I always have this fear in the back of my mind. I'm like, am I unintentionally stealing something from somebody else? And it's always my concern of oh my God, I hope that I'm not I didn't realize that I took somebody else's, stuff. Because if I do, I always, I'm like, if I did, I'm going to give you that credit, and because it's not intentional. Because as an ADHD, as someone with ADHD, I'm an integrator, and I integrate what I learn into like how I think. I mean, I do it almost on autopilot. It's just how my brain works.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking when you said that. It's that you integrate information so quickly that it's just there. It's there. It's yours. It's ours. That's how we work.
It's ours to share. It's
there you go.
It's like trying to copyright. The who was the musician that tried to like trademark or patent the key of G or something like.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm sure that all of those words together are not my own to keep. So that's fine.
All right. What we're going to do right now is we are going to move into the last part of the show, which is the part of the show I call the random question round. This is the part of the show that has nothing to do with ADHD, which then paradoxically has everything to do with ADHD. Are you ready?
Okay. I believe I am.
All right. First question is, share with us an invention or an improvement upon a current invention that would just change things, change the world, change something.
Oh, Lord, I have no idea. Let me think here for a moment. I'm completely drawing a blank, Eric. Completely.
Okay.
This is why I'm not an inventor or a scientist. I'm sorry.
Okay. If you think of something as we're continuing this, just let me know.
Okay.
It might come to you as soon as we hang up, though.
It might.
It might. Okay. What we're going to do for the next part of the show, so I have this little, it's a game. It's the right or wrong edition of Table Topics. And Table Topics is a part of Toastmasters. And because we're both in the Toastmasters group together, I thought that this would be a really great thing to do for our random question around. And if you don't know what Toastmasters is, it's a group that helps people with public speaking. And part of Table Topics is it's an opportunity to kind of do some kind of on the spot talking in front of others. So the person that's leading that part of the discussion will give a topic, and then people have the opportunity to talk for a minute or two. So I have this box of cards. So I'm going to just kind of pick at random, and we'll do a few. Okay. Is justice or mercy more important?
Boy, I think they're both so important. I think that justice, if it's true justice, has mercy. I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
I would agree with that. I don't think there really is justice without mercy. Yeah. And I think with my brain just did like 10,000 thoughts all at one moment. So I'm just going to move on. Okay. What quality would you like to improve in yourself?
Discipline. I look at discipline not as punishment, as those things that, those days when I am disciplined are those days that I get up and go, okay, what at the end of my day will make me feel like this has been a really good day? Because I think that discipline involves those things that you do that are really just great for you. And I don't know why I get away from discipline. Some days I have nailed it. Other days it's like, really, what happened there? And I know life just works better and feels better when I am particularly disciplined.
So it sounds like what you're saying is to be able to do more of what you are intending on doing.
Yes, consistently. With a little more consistently.
Okay.
Consistency.
That's you have ADHD, and
I know that. Yeah, well, that is one of the areas that just bothers me with that, because I won't do things that feel great to me, and I'm like, why not? Really? Why did that just happen? So yeah, that is where my ADHD I think does impact me, and I wish it did not quite so much. I
would agree with. I could echo that as well. It's if I can just have my A game every day.
Yes.
Okay, I'm skipping questions. If you loved your job but found out the company was knowingly dumping toxic waste into a river, what would you do?
Oh, I mean, that's just not even a no-brainer for me for a couple of reasons. A, I would have to leave my job and report the company. And you need to understand also my daughter Anna is studying sustainable development. And she has had a huge impact on me. And that's just not even a question about it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question.
Okay.
The question reads, did you ever cheat in school?
No, I honestly didn't. I'm that person. I think there was once when I was very young, there was a person in my classroom, because you used to get stars at the back of the classroom. Like in October, there'd be a pumpkin on the wall, and with your name, and you'd get a star if you did something good. And given my ADD, I was constantly in the back of the room scratching the stars off because I did bad stuff. So I never had any stars at the end of the month. And Cynthia was cheating one time, and she was putting extra stars on hers so she could win. And I actually did ask her if I could have a star, and she said no, because the teacher would know something was up if I. So there was once I did try, but I didn't succeed at it.
Oh, that's a great story. I love that.
I was always sure I was going to get caught. I think that was it. I would never, I do think ADD kids don't do more than other kids sometimes, but they get caught at everything we do because we don't cover our tracks.
Yes.
So I was always pretty sure I would get caught if I did
That's
anything.
why honesty is a really good policy when you have ADHD, because you're not going to remember what you lied about.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Well, Linnea, thank you so much. This was so much fun. I really think that you absolutely delivered a lot of value to the listeners today, and the people who do sign up for this class. When does the class start? Well,
the Managing Your Fear class is October 10th. There's several dates.
2015. Okay.
Yes. And the ADHD from the Inside Out will be. I'm sorry. That is November 9th or November 16th.
Awesome. I'm going to post all the links to everything and send me more information to it. I'll post it on the show notes to the website. You. How can people find you and reach you?
Okay. They can find me on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
They can email me at lllopresti@comcast.net, or they can look at the Arlington Center. There'll be some information up about my workshops and myself on that center.
Great. And we'll post all the links to that on the show notes page. And I would love to invite you to the Northern Illinois CHAD meeting to present on some of this stuff too. I think our group would love to have you.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Eric. This has been a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of ADHD Rewired. And if you're new to the show, welcome to ADHD Rewired. We are more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. You can see a full outline of this and all other episodes with all the links and other resources mentioned during this interview at ADHDrewired.com. Help support this podcast by checking out my sponsors. I use Zoom video conferencing nearly every day, and so can you. Go free or go pro. But please, go to erictibbers.com/Zoom so they know that I sent you. And you can get a free audiobook from Audible at erictibbers.com/Audible. And next time you shop Amazon, use the Amazon search portal at ADHDrewired.com. A small percentage of your purchase will go to support this show, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. You can also support this podcast by leaving an honest rating and review in iTunes or Stitcher. This really helps other people find this show. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Don't just be a passive listener, be an active member of the ADHD Rewired community. We are on Facebook. You can like our page, but please submit your request to join our free and growing community. And don't forget to check your other inbox because I screen everybody before they come into our community. Looking for a coach? If you're still listening at this point and you answered yes, come to my website at ADHDrewired.com and schedule your free 20-minute consultation or call me at 224-993-9450. Is your school, business, or organization hiring speakers? I provide fun and engaging presentations full of practical solutions that both educate and entertain. Hire me for your next professional development day or corporate training event. Go to ADHDrewired.com/talks. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week. I'm here for the first time since you've been 4 years old with Gibson. Hi, Gibson.
And I have been hopscotching that and putting Mookie's letters in front of each letter all days.
Hey, Gibson.
Yeah.
You told me that you want your own podcast.
Yeah.
What do you want your podcast to be about?
Playing a drum set.
Yeah, you want a podcast about playing a drum set?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you gonna play your drum set, or are you just gonna talk about playing a drum set?
Talk about playing my drum set, or both.
Or both? Do you have a drum set?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's in my piano room.
It's in your piano room?
Yeah. The piano room is where I play the piano.
Why don't we call it the drum room now? Because now you have a drum set in there.
Okay.
We could just call it the music room.
Yeah, I like going in the music room.
So what do you want to call the podcast? Do you have a name for it?
Yeah.
What?
BDHD.
BDHD?
And the ADHD.
Oh,
the second letter of the alphabet. Yours is the first.
So it's going to be BDHD Rewired?
Uh-huh. Mommy's going to be CDHD Rewired.
Mommy's podcast will be CDHD Rewired?
Oh, yeah. I want to lick the microphone.
We don't lick the microphones.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what makes you happy?
Squeezes.
Squeezes make you happy?
10 squeezes all over my body.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What makes you excited?
I don't know.
You were excited earlier today. Do you remember why?
Why?
Where did we go?
Curious George.
Curious George. Did you like him, or were you kind of freaked out a little bit?
Freaked out a little bit.
Was Curious George a good actor?
Nah.
I kind of have to agree with you. Hey, so you said that on the BDHD Rewired podcast that we are going to get to hear you play the drums.
Oh, yeah.
Should we go do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go together into the piano drum room. Should we do that? Okay. So we're walking through our house. Do you need lights, or are you okay?
I need lights.
You need some lights? Okay. So I noticed that right now you're standing up while you play with you have one stick or both sticks? Here, there's the other one. It's on the ground. All right. Gibson Robert Tivers on the drums. How about you play me a song on the piano? I want to hear you play.
Skip, 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 my woo. Skip, 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 my woo. Skip, 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 my woo. Number jack that is. That's a number jacks of Skip to My Woo.
Sounds like a very serious piano song there. Who's your... Hey, Gibson, Who's your inspiration for playing piano? Do you have a favorite piano player?
Yep.
Who is it?
The Magical Lobster.
The Magical Lobster?
Uh-huh.
He's really incredible.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite song of his?
Yep.
What's your favorite song by the Magical Lobster?
Dabby Doo.
How does that one go?
Let's see. That's how the song goes.
I really like that. It's the Magical Lobster. Do you have any other piano players that you really like?
Nah.
Nah, just the Magical Lobster?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
He has all kinds of things that start with the letter L.
Like what? Like lollipops?
Yep.
And what else?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Let's go back to family room.
Okay.
Right off the trampoline.
You jumped right off the trampoline.
Oh, yeah.
How far were you off the ground?
I'll show you.
Well, I want you to tell me. Come here.
That's how far off the
So
ground it was.
Gibson, as a podcaster in training, part of what we want to do as podcasters is tell a story with our words that allow us to see it in our mind. So you could say, I jumped off the trampoline, and it was like jumping off a what?
Fence.
It was like jumping off a fence?
Huh?
Okay, so it was like jumping off a fence. Was it a short fence, a medium fence, or a really big fence?
Medium fence.
Okay.
The size was... The inches were 2 inches.
It was 2 inches. Okay, it was a 2-inch fence. So if I were a caterpillar, that would be really big.
Yeah.
So
I'll handle that.
what other segments are we going to have on your podcast?
ABC songs.
ABC songs? What is that now?
Nah.
No, not yet.
So, bye-bye. Thank you for coming to my podcast. Subscribe to BDHD Rewired.
How did she know to say that? Well, you heard it here. Subscribe to BDHD Rewired, and if you like us, leave a review.
Yeah, the end.